As you watch the screen, your heart begins to beat faster. There's a fluttering in the pit of your stomach. Your throat is dry. Your palms damp. Suddenly a chill runs down your spine. You clutch the person next to you. You tell yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. But sooner or later, it's time to go home.
Welcome to Film Strip and another entry in our 2023 Shocktober episodes. I'm Jay.
I'm Ron.
I'm Brian.
I'm Kelly.
And we're here to talk about Ginger Snaps, starring Katharine Isabelle, Emily Perkins, Chris Lemke, Jesse Moss, and Mimi Rogers. Written by Karen Walton and directed by John Fawcett. Released in 2001 on a $4.5 million budget, had a modest box office, but has gained a major cult following through home video through the years. But first things first, welcome back to the show, Kelly Brink, editor and producer of True Crime Binge, host of the True Crime Sleep Stories, True Crime IRL, former executive producer of Misunderstood with Rachel Yucatel, and Truth and Justice with Bob Ruff, as well as working on producing a new show for 2024 with the captain from the True Crime Garage. Kelly, hands down the coolest ginger she-wolf we all know, so how can we not have you on this show? Thanks again for joining us. Tell folks a little bit about what you've been up to.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, basically everything you said. That's why I've been, super busy. I kind of left true crime for a little while and went into entertainment news, but now I'm diving back into true crime. And I'm happy to be back. Last time was so much fun. I loved it, talking about No Country for Old Men. And this week my favorite genre ever is horror. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you on. And like I say, Ginger Snaps has been one that's been on the Film Strip to-do list for quite some time, probably as long as Ron's been on the show. He's been after me to watch it. And I finally ripped the Band-Aid off a few months ago. And because, Tubi is the greatest streaming service in the world. We've established that now. And I think this entire Shocktober is brought to you by Tubi. But
wait, is Tubi the one where you can watch everything for free? Is that what that is?
Yep.
Yeah.
You just got to live through the same 3 ads over and over again, which
nice.
Is no problem for me.
Cool.
And
that's
so,
great.
So I found this and watched it, and I was texting Ron and our other co-host Lindsay. I was like, "Oh yeah, we definitely got to do this. It's got to be there." So we're starting to put together the Shocktober lineup, and I was like, "Okay, we need guests for each of the Shocktober episodes." I was like, "Aha! I know exactly who to get for this." So
yes, I'm so glad you did. Oh my gosh, this is
so.
Awesome.
Kelly, is this your first exposure to Ginger Snaps?
It is, in fact. Jay, I had never even heard of Ginger Snaps, and I'm really ashamed of myself. Like, it's got a cult following. It was filmed like 24 years ago now, and I had never heard of it. So I'm super surprised because I was a little bit of like a goth girl, a little kind of like when I was in high school. I can totally identify with the two main characters of this movie but I had never heard of it. So yeah, I was really, it was, well, we'll get into it, but it was interesting.
Now, you say horror is your favorite genre. Where are you on like werewolf movies, though? Where do they fall in kind of your lexicon?
They are not even on my radar. It's usually like hauntings and demons and possessions and stuff like that I normally watch. But werewolf movies are not. I've seen An American Werewolf in London. And then, of course, the only other real werewolf thing is Twilight. I haven't seen many werewolf
movies. Does that count?
Movies.
I don't know.
No, that doesn't count at all. But so I was pleasantly surprised. This is like one of the best werewolf movies of all time. Total different perspective. It's like a girl power werewolf movie. So I was all about this. Yeah.
All right. Now, Ron, you're the fan of this because, like I said, you've been after me to do this for a long time. So what's your history with Ginger Snaps?
Well, you know how sometimes you discover like a movie at 2 a.m. and it hooks you so hard that you just stay with it?
Yeah.
Even though you've got stuff to do the next day? Like, that's how this happened to me. It's like 1:30 or 2 in the dorms at like 2002. I can't sleep, so I'm sitting watching TV. And this movie comes on. I'm like, okay, you had me at werewolf. I'll watch it. Canadians, whatever. And then, like, 30 minutes into the movie, I'm like, okay, well, I see I'm not sleeping tonight, so let's put some coffee on and let's finish this thing out. It's kind of pretty similar to the story of how I discovered Miracle Mile. Except Miracle Mile I was getting ready for my job at like 5:30 in the morning, and then it was like, well, I'm just going to have to call in sick.
Who watches movies while they get ready for work at 5:30 in the morning? I don't. That's a lot of that takes a lot of motivation. I can barely even open my eyes, let alone pay attention to a movie.
Well, in my case, it was because I used my TV as an alarm clock because it had one of those.
The timers
on automatically at 5:30. Yeah. So it's like, all right, I'll turn the volume to like 50, and then that'll wake me up. And then it'll be on whatever channel I was watching last, which was Showtime probably. And then all of a sudden, there's this great 1980s nuclear Holocaust thriller happening, and I'm like, I get literally 3/4 of the way through Miracle Mile. I'm like, okay, I either have to call in sick to work or I gotta go. So I chose to go. So then I had to remember what the movie was and track it down on Netflix like 5 years after the fact to see the ending.
You waited 5 years for the ending?
I couldn't find it anywhere.
Now that's a cliffhanger, definitely. 5 years.
And I'd forgotten, and I didn't write the name down. I had to figure out what it was because I started like 10 minutes into the movie where it's just this kind of like meet cute of, them going on this date or whatever. And then all of a sudden they get a phone call. It's like, hey, somebody's going to drop a nuke on Los Angeles. So then it was like, all right, I got to figure out what this movie is. All right, that looks like, I think, Mayor Winningham. So it's Mayor Winningham, that's Anthony Edwards. So I write down Anthony Edwards. I put nuclear. I had to enter all this stuff into Jeeves or whatever, Google.
Yeah, I was going to say, this was before Google, right? Ask
Jeeves. Oh, God.
But yeah, so that's that's how that happened, and that's how I discovered Ginger Snaps, and I immediately became a huge fan of this movie for obvious reasons.
I mean, I think most people who see it become really big fans of the movie, but yeah, it's gotten some pretty good reviews. Yeah.
All right, Brian, you and I have talked about werewolves on the Years of Buffy on the Art of Slaying podcast, but I think this is new for you too.
No, brand new as of today. I had never heard of this, and you had asked if I would be interested in joining, and I said, yeah, if I can watch it in time, I'll join. And so today rolls around, and I'm like, well, shit, I better watch this. So I threw it on while I was working, and I was like, wow, okay. I see why we're doing this.
I got a few text messages. You're like, that opening was a thing. I was like, oh, just wait. This movie is emo AF.
Leg shaving was
yeah, we'll get into all of that. There's a lot to get into this one, but like I say, I pulled the Band-Aid off on this one a few minutes ago, and then obviously wanted to get back to it. But werewolf movies for me too, Kelly, big hole in my horror watching. I haven't seen many of them. American Werewolf in London was one of the first ones we did on this show, a year ago. I think Ron and Lindsay and I did that one, and I just haven't seen a lot of them. I don't know what it was. It wasn't that I didn't like them. I just never gravitated toward the werewolves, and I didn't know this thing existed until many years after it had been. But I know both of the lead actors in it because I know Emily Perkins obviously from the TV version of it, which I will always consider to be the superior version of that, even though it's not terribly faithful to the book because Tommy Lee Wallace rules. And you give that man no money and creativity and watch what happens. So Halloween 3, things like that. But I knew her from that, and I knew Catherine Isabel from all her other horror stuff, particularly like Freddy versus Jason and things like that, which the three of us have, Ron and Brian and I reviewed several years ago. So I was like, okay, yeah, I know this is like a thing like that she's known for or whatever, and she apparently has never like shamed away from it and likes it. And I'm like, okay, Mimi Rogers is slumming it in this horror movie too for reasons. I got to watch that, because I knew her from the 80s and 90s. So when I finally turned it on to watch it, I was not prepared for what it was about. I had no idea what it was about. I was like, okay, obviously this is girls and werewolves, so we're going to flip that. But I didn't know the setup. I know nothing. And so I'm sitting there on my couch going, wow, that was a different experience. So,
yeah. And what is it about? It's about periods. That's what it's about.
Right.
Like it's a movie about periods. That's pretty much it. That sums it all up.
That's a heck of a framing
when I
device.
first started watching it, I thought it was a movie about suicide. I was like, what is going on here?
Girls,
Like, what kind of movie are we watching?
I know.
Oh,
Well,
man.
that's what I say, man. This movie is super emo, so it's such a moment of its time. And had they had
So
any
dark.
real budget at all, the soundtrack would have been way killer. But they obviously didn't. So you got a lot of Canadian post grunge bands, circling
And that
the drain in
accent,
this movie. Yeah, oh yeah, can't beat.
I love a
So,
good Canadian accent. Yes, can't beat
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, one of the first questions my wife asked is she's seen it before, obviously, because we're married. She didn't really have a choice. But we're watching it again for this, and one of the first questions, she was like, this must have came out in like the late 90s, right? Because everyone looks super grunge. I was like, well, it's like 2000, 2001, but it was in Canada, so it was still the 90s until like 2005.
well, like what we talked about before, decades sort of wrap around each other. Like the 80s isn't really the 80s till like 1984, So like the early, like you can watch that first Friday the 13th movie in 1980. That's pretty much the 70s. Like that's not an 80s movie, But part 5 is definitely an 80s movie because it's right in the middle of all of it. So,
But before we get started, Jay, have you not seen The Howling either?
I have not seen The Howling. That is
How about Underworld?
I saw part of that once on one of those FX things that was blowing by, and I just was like, "That's not for me." I don't think I can do like
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it's good, but no, I haven't seen Underworld either. But no, I've never seen The Howling. I know who's in it, but no, that's another one we'll have to get off the list one day. So,
Well, that's another classic werewolf movie, right? Because I haven't seen that either, but I know all about it. So yeah.
I feel like
The
I'm aware
Howling
of it, but yeah.
Like The Howling and American Werewolf are like the 1-2 punch of 80s werewolf movies. Like one of those is going to be your favorite, and one of those is going to have your favorite transformation scene because they both have some very incredible special effects and some strange.
So do they use like CGI or actual like animatronics or like what?
Well, it was made in the 80s, right? So this is very like
it's
all
like
practical effects. Yeah. So
like an actual robot.
You've got like Rick Baker on one hand or Rob Bottin on the other hand. So you really have it's you can't go wrong with your special effects because it's two of the best people to have ever picked up a sculpting brush.
Ron, the funny thing is I haven't seen The Howling, but I've seen American Werewolf in Paris more than once. Because I had to know what the sequel was to American Werewolf in London, and oh boy, that's a bad.
Well, if you want to do that, Jay, we've got like 8 Howling sequels. We could definitely go down if you want to revive
Another
the old
series,
school,
another franchise.
the old school. The tradition of Film Strip has been recently that no matter when we start watching one movie, we watch the entire series. So
yeah, whether we review them all or not, but
these poor fools have seen this poor fool, meaning Jay, has seen 13 Hellraisers.
Oh yeah!
my
I've seen
gosh.
all of them. I even watched the newest one, which I cannot convince Nick to come back on and do the new Hulu one, which I actually thought was pretty good. Come back on with me and do that one, but you have to sub in for him on that one, Ron. But because he just refuses, like because I drugged him through those last 10, and that was it. But
I can't do the accent, but I can make a good go of it.
yeah.
Did you guys watch the prequel and the sequel to Ginger Snaps then while you were watching the other ones? Because there are 3, I think, right? It's a trilogy.
I watched the second one, but I have not seen the third one. So
the third one is optional. It's not bad, but it's not like it's like the Hateful Eight, but with a werewolf. So
Okay.
that's a
and a lot less and a lot less racial slurs and character actors. But
Got it.
yeah. Yeah, I remember Brian and I were texting about that. They're just like, "There's 2 more of these." I'm like, yeah. I don't think we're ever gonna do those, but that you never know. Never say never on film.
I like 2. Okay,
so it was fine. Yeah, it was more or less what I expected it to be. But before we get into that, though, I guess we do need to talk about Ginger Snap. So, Ron, I'm going to toss it to you. Please dazzle us with the plot summary of what this movie's about, besides just periods and werewolves, as we've already established.
well, there goes half my first paragraph. Okay. You kids know the worst part about living at Bailey Downs. All the damn werewolves. Well, all the damn werewolf. The beast of Bailey Downs, that is, terrorizing the neighborhood, killing dogs, and bringing death to the suburbs. Also bringing death to the suburbs? Ginger and Bridget Fitzgerald. A pair of misfit teenagers who like to stage gory death scenes, much to the horror and delight of their classmates and the annoyance of their parents. These classmates do tend to pick on the girls, but that's kind of to be expected because, if you're being deliberately weird, you're bringing it on yourself. One night, on their way to get some revenge on the school bully, Ginger gets her period. As if that wasn't inconvenient enough, Ginger also gets attacked by a monster. This creature chases the girls through the neighborhood, and it's only dumb luck that the chasing creature is hit by a van being driven by local drug dealer / greenhouse guy Sam. After the attack, Ginger starts to change. Aside from the issue of blood, that is. Strange new hair, weird urges, aggressive behavior, typical teenager, except for the fact that she occasionally eats neighborhood dogs. After hooking up with classmate Jason, Ginger continues to change for the worse, attacking the bully Trina in public. Meanwhile, in the background, Bridget seeks out Sam to talk about what the van hit and how to figure out how not to become a werewolf. Silver doesn't really seem to work, so the next attempt is obviously going to be monkshood. Trina shows up to the girls' house one day to pick a fight and is accidentally killed. The girls throw her into a freezer, then bury her in a shallow grave under their childhood playhouse. Bridget gets a monkshood solution from Sam and goes to give it to Ginger, but she runs into werewolf Jason instead. Great test subject. She jams a syringe into his neck, and it turns out that, at least judging from his initial response, it might work. Ginger, meanwhile, escapes the family basement and kills the meddling school counselor. Her bloodlust is not sated, and unfortunately for Sam, Ginger finds a new target, the guy trying to get between her and her sister B. Bridget arrives at the Halloween party, finding Ginger attacking Sam. Bridget wounds Ginger's palm and her own, and then they clasp hands, sharing the disease with one another as a test of loyalty. On the way back to the house, Ginger feels her change coming on, so Sam whacks her with a shovel and they drag her back to the Fitzgerald basement to try to cure her. Ginger transforms midway through the trip because your period always seems to come at the most inconvenient time, and Ginger breaks out of the van. Sam and Bridget try to work on the cure, but Ginger transforms completely into a big wolf puppet and attacks Sam. Bridget tries to save him from Ginger by sharing in a big blood feast. Not the Herschel Gordon Lewis one, although they've probably both seen that. But Ginger smells her lies and kills Sam anyway. Ginger chases B through the house while B runs into the basement to hide. With a knife in one hand and a syringe in the other, Ginger chooses death in true goth chick fashion, ramming herself into the knife and giving herself a fatal wound. Bridget rests her head on her sister's dying chest and weeps. As credits roll. There you go.
That is an excellent summary of the hour and 48-minute tour de force that this movie is.
I told you it was all about periods. I mean,
it really is. And I guess we'll just start with the setup. The teenage sister's obsessed with death. Because Brian, I'm with you. The first time I saw this, I was like, what? Well, I thought this was about werewolves. What is the murder scene and all this? And then I realized I was like, oh no, these chicks are just doing fanfic murder porn for reasons. I mean, it's never explained, right? They're just obsessed with death.
That was even before Instagram, TikTok, social media, stuff like that. It's not like they could have some raunchy OnlyFans that's all goth focused or something. They were way ahead of their time with the whole photo staging thing. It was genius, really.
Yeah. 2001. I'm like, yeah.
What the hell?
I mean, my question was where are they posting this? A GeoCities site or something? What do you do with these?
I know where.
Their classroom.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you posted it in your class. Yeah. All I could think was if Chainsaw and Dave from the great Mark Harmon movie Summer School had daughters, that's who these chicks were.
That's such a good thought. Yes. I
mean, really, they're the horror kids.
Yep. Yeah. These girls were comically dark and goth. I mean, it was great.
Now, Kelly, you outed yourself in the intro. You said you used to be a goth teenager and stuff. So were you ever into that extreme stuff or just more in the dark makeup and Marilyn Manson?
I mean, I'm old, so goth wasn't even really a thing back then. I just would dress all in black and listen to metal music. And one time, before it was even cool, I shaved my head down below and I did, and I tried to give myself a tattoo once on my ankle. That didn't turn out very well. I was like that. I mean, not like B and Ginger, but my own little small town version of that, I guess.
I had that same haircut back then.
Yep,
in the late 90s.
Yeah,
the undercut.
Yeah,
Yes,
like when I had hair, I had the Nikki Sixx "Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away" hair that was like shaved on the sides. But when you pulled it down, it would cover it, so I could look normal, but then I could pull it back. So
Yeah, that's
back
like
when I
an
tried to be
undercut.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in those days, I didn't have the cool tattoos or anything. But
yeah.
So
I was cool too.
in a way, but no, the setup of this, like you meet these two, and I got to give a lot of credit for both of these actors just going for it. Like they clearly understood the assignment and just bought it. Like I think Catherine Isabel can be sort of this really forceful, like I don't give a damn what you think kind of chick. That's sort of every role she's ever played. But Emily Perkins can just play kind of the wallflower of weird, is what I call it. Like everything I've ever seen her in, that's what she does. And that's a good match between these two sisters that are not quite twins, but they're so close together. And I think they explain like that Bridget skipped a grade, and so that's why they're in the same grade or whatever. But I got a good kick out of the chemistry that the two of them have with each other, because a lot of times you see casts and stuff where they're supposed to be siblings and like they don't act at all like siblings, but I knew people that were this close together, in age, and that were really close like this. They didn't do the photograph stuff, but they did other things together like this. So I thought that was really, really well done.
They didn't do the photograph part, but they did the thing where one of them turns into a werewolf.
Well, not that I was aware of. How about that? So.
Did you notice they were technically Irish twins, and she's a ginger?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they were definitely playing along on that. So,
and they are Fitzgeralds. So
yes.
Oh my goodness! So all the Irish theme going on there. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What's fun is that you mentioned like the parents are annoyed by this. It's like the dad's annoyed by it because he's just playing annoyed dad. But then Mimi Rogers is like trying to be like the cool mom that lets them explore their random weirdness and stuff. And I knew she was in this movie because I'd seen the cast list, and I thought, what's Mimi Rogers doing in a movie like this? And then I watched him like, oh, she's doing that. Okay. Yeah.
I was so surprised to see her.
Yeah.
I didn't know the cast before I started watching it. I was like, I know her. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those surprise things that I just didn't expect her, to pop up and do the things that she does in this movie too. So
yeah.
You got to make your SAG minimum somehow, Jay.
What I found interesting about this is that, again, the framing device again is this rash of unexplained dog killings in the neighborhood. There's obviously another werewolf around. And when Ginger gets attacked and transformed, the way they set that up, and we've blown in the plot somewhere where she gets her period and that attracts the wolf to her. At least they play it off like that. Did y'all get that? Because
yes.
That's what okay.
Yep.
It reminded me of Anchorman. I think that's the movie. Are the bears attracted to the periods or whatever? Remember that line from, I don't know. It was just funny to me.
It's also a drop thing in the beginning of Friday the 13th Part 2. The Paul, the lead counselor, has the nerve to like drop that on all of his female coworkers. So that's why he deserved to die, because he laid that out on them. So the bears might attack at Crystal Lake, but no, it was just Jason. So, but yeah, no, when that happened, I remember going, wait a minute. And I actually backed the movie up the first time I watched it to go, are they trying to say? And then it's like, oh yeah, they just said it out loud and I missed it. But yeah, it's right there. So of all the things that I've seen werewolves get attracted to, and Brian, I'm kind of tossing it to you on this one because I'm remembering back to when Oz became a werewolf on Buffy and how that all went down. I don't ever remember this being one of the like things that used to attract the werewolf. There was a lot of pheromones going on, but there wasn't that.
Yeah, there you go, right there. Pheromones. It's all about the sex, right? What's a period? It's a sexual thing. So
right.
That kind of scent, that kind of whatever. It always seems to attract monsters, blood of some sort. So it doesn't surprise me that they went with this at all. In fact, it makes complete sense to me that they went with this trope. But yeah, anything related to sex usually attracts the vampires and the werewolves and other beasts.
What does
not the mummy
me,
though? Yeah, he doesn't go for that apparently.
But the mummy's dead. He has no feeling.
True.
That actually, though, surprises me that no other movie has focused on that time of the month attracting vampires because vampires want blood. Like, I'm surprised. I've never heard of a movie doing that before, but it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And it ties into the full moon thing, and everyone's mood changes, and sometimes girls sync up with the moon phases,
Yes.
and so why
Well,
not?
the whole movie, like the title of the movie is a pun. Ginger snaps. She does snap. Why does she snap? It's that time of the month. It's that whole trope, right?
Yeah.
And I thought of like when they came up with this, and I don't know this for a fact, I didn't research it that deeply, but I'm like, whoever wrote this just had to think that was the most clever idea on earth, and it actually is. It's really smart.
The woman who wrote it actually, I think Ginger was not going to be that character's name. She had a different name, but she, I don't know, rearranged things and renamed the character, I think, Ginger, because it made more sense and it fit in with that whole ginger snaps thing. So I read a little bit about that. Yeah.
That's very interesting. It makes me wonder what the original hook for the movie was, if it wasn't that.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a deep question that I don't know the answer to. I think actually I'm just making this up. I'm pretty sure the names were reversed. The Bridget and Ginger characters might have been reversed, and then I don't know.
It could have
That's
worked
what I think.
either way. But what is neat to watch is to watch. Yeah, this movie plays partially almost like a little bit like Teen Wolf does. I guess if you call that a werewolf movie, I've seen that. I don't know if that really counts, but we'll say it does for these purposes.
It counts.
Sure.
Okay. But Teen Wolf 2 does not. I'm just going to make that clear right now. That does not count.
Jason Bateman was great. Knock it off.
I'm going to go with Brian here. Jason Bateman is great.
To be continued on a future episode of this show. But anyway, having seen Teen Wolf and the way the comedy,
be scared of like a 4-foot tall werewolf, Jay.
No, but the comedy that they use in Teen Wolf is played over with some of the way with Ginger's going through her transformations and some of the initial things here, because you saw the way that like Michael J. Fox like freaked out about his fingernails, his hair growing, like, no, Dad, I'm okay. And Ginger's doing the same thing. Katharine Isabelle does the same thing in the bathroom when her mom comes in and she's trying to shave off all this extra hair. And all of a sudden she's like, God, leave me alone, Mom. God, it was hilarious. I got a big chuckle out of that.
And she was like, she closed the shower curtain. She's like, I'm just fat. I don't want you to see me. And she's like, just playing on all these teenage insecurities, but she's a werewolf. Yeah.
Now, Brian, I know you've had strong reactions to the leg shape scene.
Well, I didn't have strong reactions. I just thought it was kind of funny. She's in there struggling to shave off this dog hair.
Well, yeah,
wolf hair, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And it just made me chuckle.
Yeah. I don't, Venus don't make one for that. Like,
oh, they do.
For all the werewolf needs.
They make one for everything, Jay.
I don't buy those, so I don't know. But okay.
Well, just wait till Manscaped sponsors the podcast. We'll definitely be like shaving werewolves.
I think we're the only podcast that hasn't run an ad for Manscaped in the world. But not that we're opposed to it, by the way, for anyone who might be listening. But hit us up at filmstrippodcast@gmail.com. One of us eventually shaves that email.
We've got at least one guy who shaves his head. We got at least one guy who shaves his face, and you've got me who doesn't really shave anything. So it's perfect.
I just keep the neck, it's just because when I run, it gets in my way. But, so and I love how we're speaking for our co-host, Lindsay, who's not here. So we don't know. We'll ask offline.
I wish Lindsay was here.
I feel for the creep factor would be lowered by a factor of 30, but as we talk about these things, but no, I do love though the way they go through the transformations, and I do have to applaud. I mean, for a movie with a very small budget, like the effects here are really good. I don't know who did them. I didn't see any names that I recognized, but I thought the prosthetics and everything as they worked through really did a good job of conveying that transformation, and it wasn't like an overnight, like it was in stages. And I wonder what y'all thought of that, because most of the time werewolf movies, it's pretty quick. Like you become a werewolf and you're a werewolf. And in this case, like she has to keep like killing people and killing things to become more wolfy, as it were.
She's just lucky it was around Halloween, because she was that transformation. I mean, she started looking like a Klingon. She was like, I don't know. She started looking very crazy, and everyone was like, that's a sick Halloween costume. And no. Yeah.
I thought the tail was a nice touch.
Yeah.
That was gross.
I was not
actually,
expecting that. Yeah, I was not
No.
expecting that at all.
just a skin tail, no fur, nothing like that. Just a little wagging little skin tail thing. It
Mhm.
was so gross.
And
Yeah.
the fact that they paid so much attention to detail, they got the extra claw that like dogs have growing out of her foot. I thought that was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the surprise dew claw is always a nice touch, and one of the more horrifying looking things in the movie, because the tail, is whatever. It could just be like a big pilonidal cyst or something, but the dew claw is when you start to get really concerned, or at least when I get concerned.
Well, then,
Didn't
like
she
you said,
pull it out too.
yeah, she pulled
the
one
dew
out.
claw out. Oh.
Yeah, it just grew back, But like Kelly said, like her eyebrows start to do like the Klingon point, and they put that little like Terminator prosthetic over her head and all. I'm sitting here doing this as the audio podcast of the visual medium here, but that's you know what I'm talking about when you see that, and I love that like she just gets like random shoulder hair that kind of pops up and she starts covered up, and
I hate when that happens. By the way, so
She got vamp
too.
face from Buffy too.
yes, she did. Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
very much. Yeah, I noticed that too, Brian. I don't know if
So-
you caught that. It was very
Oh, yeah.
early Buffy, but yeah.
So, fun fact, Jay, the guy who did, or one of the lead special effects guys on this movie was Paul Jones, who did the creepy vampire makeup in Nightbreed.
Okay, see that makes sense because it does look a lot like Nightbreed too.
It looks like the Nightbreed. Yeah, this is one of his joints.
Kelly, Brian, have either of y'all ever seen the incredible train wreck that is Nightbreed?
Negative.
no,
Oh, you owe that to yourself. Yeah,
is that like from the 80s or yeah?
yeah, like late '80s, early '90s. So it's
I mean that
It's
was that was the
it's,
heyday of horror, I think.
oh, what's her name? Hurt Locker.
Catherine Bigelow.
Catherine Bigelow. That's it.
Yeah, it's one of her
her first
random
movie.
horror things. Yeah, so
Oh wow.
Craig Sheffer. It's before a river ran through it, he ran through the Nightbreed. But yeah,
Bill Paxton, the late Bill
Yeah.
Paxton, R.I.P.
yes, the great Bill Paxton. But
Talking about those prosthetics and stuff, though, I was reading and listening to another podcast and YouTube episode about the process of that. And what's that actress's name? Ginger. What is her name?
Catherine Isabel.
Okay, so she was talking about having all of that on all the time and how miserable it was. She was like, her legs and hands were stained pink from all the blood, and she had to have Q-tips up her nose like all the time so she could breathe and all this stuff. Like, it was not a pleasant experience for that actress.
Oh no, you can imagine, like, especially on a set like that, there's not a lot of money for cooling you down or anything. So when you're in that crap, you're just in it for 14 hours and just living it at that point. You have to go to lunch like that at catering, So that would have been a rough day. But
One of my favorite Halloween costumes as a child was a werewolf costume that was not like clothing; it was glue-on latex appliances.
oh man, that's elaborate. Wow.
Very similar to the ones that like she's wearing in this movie, because there's one that kind of made the nose into a snout, and there was a big forehead brow, and they came with all this makeup to blend it in with your face and glue to glue it on you. And when it came off, it took the top layer of skin off of my face.
Wow.
So I'm like
imagine,
8 years old ish, looking.
Oh, I
like
can believe it.
yeah, it was crazy.
See, my frame of reference for like movie makeup knowledge is not only Chainsaw and Dave from summer school, but also FX, the movie FX, where they put it on Jerry Orbach, and the story of Jerry Orbach talking about what that did to his face after they glued that appliance to him. He's like, that was a real thing. They taught the actor how to apply that, and he did it wrong. And so when they peeled it off of Orbach, it just took this row off of his forehead.
Ouch.
And he was on Broadway at the time, so he was pissed. He had to like cover that up and everything. So, before Law and Order, Jerry Orbach. But yeah, but no, I love the way that it all looks in her transformation. But what's neat is that she's Ginger. We should say about their personalities. Ginger is definitely the most outspoken one, and kind of I don't want to label her bad, but she's definitely got the attitude of the two of them. And Bridget's the more demure one or whatever. And it only amplifies that for both of them. Even though Bridget hasn't been attacked, she becomes much more like reserved and kind of very afraid. And Ginger just becomes like turned to 11 after she starts becoming more wolfy.
Yes. Yeah. She got her period. She got bit by a werewolf, and then she got freaking hot. She marches back into those high school hallways. Her hair's different. Like, she's glowing. Like, she...
Mhm.
And then she got she turned into she was kind of slutty. I'm just going to say it.
She's got those cool Rogue from X-Men gray forelocks.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got that going on, and I love that they've had the mean girl, soccer player, rugby player, whatever they're doing out there, who's already like giving her crap, or whatever, and then her first thing is to steal that girl's boyfriend, like right in front of her, and I was like, oh, this is like Mean Girls, but with werewolves all of a sudden, and I kind of got a kick out of that. I had a good time watching her do that because you always want to see the mean girl get it right, and but not only that, I didn't necessarily want to see her murdered the way that she gets killed though, because she kills her twice. Like it is harsh the way she cheats.
And they kill her dog, right? You kill the dog. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So
but they kill dogs left and right in this movie.
They did. I mean, it was like so many dead dogs. It was insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely not only be one alpha, Jay, and it's gonna be Ginger. And if Grover and Norman if Norman has to become a snack to learn his place, then them little dogs have a lot of fight.
Well, I mean, I think at one point, like Bridget's like, well, if as long as you're just eating dogs, I guess it's okay. Like she's trying to excuse like the bad behavior, but that's what you do, right? When you're like you're related to somebody or whatever, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Like you didn't really kill anybody, right? You just killed a couple of dogs. It's like, you knocked over a mailbox. It's a victimless crime, But truthfully, it's just an escalation.
It is. Yeah, like if you're one of those people who would rather see a person get it in a movie than the dog, and you don't want to watch this.
Yeah, but Kelly, you're the true crime expert of this podcast, so the escalation is always like you start on animals and then you work up to people, right? That's
exactly.
That's all.
Serial killers do it. Werewolves do it. Everyone starts with the animals. Yes, onto the humans. Yep, that's how it progresses.
Yeah, doesn't the werewolf in Silver Bullet also start out killing local animals?
I think so. Yeah, in the book at least. Now in the movie, it kills the future manager of the Cleveland Indians. But James Gannon is the first kill in that movie. You know what? And you just reminded me that Nick and I did that. I never thought of that as a werewolf movie. I think of it more as a Gary Busey movie. But Nick and I did that one way back in the day on Film Strip, but doing some Stephen King stuff. But I guess that's a werewolf movie. Everett McGill, maybe the coolest werewolf preacher of all time. But
can you think of anyone who's more like a human werewolf than Gary Busey?
I was just gonna say that.
Yes. And this is Busey in like his most like outrageous possible way you could think of him.
Gary Busey is his own horror movie. Like he he really is. Doing all that and
fresh off the motorcycle wreck and looking to just get weird with it.
And this is before Corey Haim like completely went Corey Haim. So this is when he was still somewhat innocent in the world. At least we believe. But that one goes by. I'd forgotten about that one. But but you're right that in the book that one starts off killing off the local animals, and then it progresses to people because. If you believe the thing about werewolves is that they can't control their bloodlust, right? Which in this movie, it's played off that way too. But the way to play the metaphor out is like, well, this girl's now becoming a woman. So obviously she can't control herself. So as you said, Kelly, she becomes kind of slutty. But the way she's doing it though, is not like she can't control it. The way I read it is that Ginger's like, I'm doing this because I can, and who's going to stop me, and especially when she realizes like, oh, I'm going to pass this on to somebody. Well, let me find the one guy who's been the biggest dick to me in this entire high school, and I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, there's an STD floating around those high school hallways, and it's called lycanthropy. And she's going to pass it on.
Penicillin is not going to help that.
No. There's no cure for that. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving, kind of like herpes.
I was thinking more along the lines of It Follows, but that works too.
You know what?
Same thing. That's one of the best freaking movies ever. It Follows is so good and so like underrated or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Oh, a lot. I mean, very similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's the same trope, and but that's always the trope in the horror story too. And Brian, we talked about that. I mean, that Buffy's full of that. Every time you finally give in and have sex, something horrible happens. The apocalypse, several people die. The house burns down. There's always
Your
something.
boyfriend starts getting vampires to bite him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Riley went down some dark roads in 4 and 5, but yeah, I mean, but I love that you see Ginger just totally leaned into this, like, fine, I'll just be evil, and so she's infecting this, and poor Bridget is walking around like trying to clean up her mess all the time. She's like, she's playing Norman Bates from Psycho, like she's trying to clean up Mother's mess, and trying to cure her along the way.
Can I ask a question? Did they pierce her belly button with a silver belly button ring, thinking that was going to get rid of the vampire?
Yep.
I wrote
the werewolf.
I literally wrote this same thing down. I'm like, why? Why did they think that would cure her, or like what is happening? Because she's like, this is going to help.
Bullet,
I'm going to pierce your belly button, and this is going to make everything better. I did not follow that part.
Well, silver purifies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a piercing that gets infected, or if you're prone to getting infections when you get piercings, they use either stainless steel or silver.
Got it. Okay.
So they were like, well, silver will purify the blood, because there's that whole exchange between Bridget and Sam where Sam's like, well, the ancient people thought that silver was a purifying agent, and when I got my piercings, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, they also said that about leeches, which makes me think there's a cut of this movie that's like, is it Speed 2, where the Jeremy Irons has a big tub full of leeches because he's got some weird blood disease?
No, that's not Speed 2 because he's not the bad guy. Man. That's Willem Dafoe. But he's in one of those.
It might be Willem Dafoe. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some movie where Willem Dafoe or Jeremy Irons or somebody has a bunch of leeches around because they've got some kind of weird blood disorder.
That's weird. Yeah. Okay, but that silver part went over my head. So
my reference to that is the great L.A. Guns song "Some Lie for Love" off the Hollywood Vampires album, where he talks about having his heart crossed with a silver spade. I recommend that tune for everyone on this show and beyond because it's a killer tune. But that was kind of my reference to what that whole bit was going on. And I remember too, like silver bullets, all that stuff. Again, that the idea was not only could you kill a werewolf with it, but you could turn someone back from it too. And so, yes, thank you. Yes, Brian, again, the podcast is the visual medium holding it up. So
what is that?
That is that album. So,
is that a
that's the album
tape?
Yeah, that's cassette tape.
Oh my word. That's
too expensive.
Wonderful.
My frame of reference, Jay, is a friend of mine pierced his own lip with a thumbtack one time, and then he got horribly infected.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Should have used silver.
There we go. Right. Thumbtack's not made of silver.
Not a thumbtack covered in rubbing alcohol. It's a bad idea.
Now you brought him up. We got to talk about Sam, the drug dealing, van driving greenhouse guy. He's like four characters in one.
He helps at the school a little bit too. I mean, right? A little bit at the school with the yard work and stuff. Also, you can buy your weed from him. He's a nice guy, and he kills vampires with his van, and he's a great guy. I really liked him, actually.
My point of reference for that was he was doing like a riff of what Josh Hartnett is in all of the 90s and 2000s movies. He was in H2O, The Faculty, all this stuff, where he's sort of this strung out, smarter, too cool for the room guy who has all the answers, but is sort of above it and doesn't care. Like that. That's what I read off of Sam. I thought he was kind of fun in that way though too, because you had to have somebody be the exposition, because Bridget doesn't know shit and Ginger doesn't care, and Mom's clearly just there to enable. So, and Dad's just whatever. So, we had to have somebody to explain it all and possibly offer an answer.
You know what? That character was originally supposed to be played by a woman. Can't remember her name. She's a musician, I think, but she switched it to a man. Like later. So,
that would have been interesting had it been, there'd been a different dynamic for sure. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
I wonder why they flipped that. It'd be curious to ever hear or know why, because I think it worked.
I think they probably flipped it so that there could be some sort of strife between the sisters, because
that is why
he brings in.
Yes, because nothing can tear two close women apart like a man. She
Right.
said that. So yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. So,
Yeah.
well, that makes sense then that this would become the thing that drives between them or whatever. But I don't know. I liked him. I thought he was fun to come in there. I was kind of surprised that the dark turn this movie makes where everybody dies, like where he dies. I thought he would make it. You know, I'm like, yeah, he'll live in the end, and him and Bridget will slink off into the night together after they vanquish
That's what you would think. Yeah.
the werewolf.
Yep.
Yeah.
His death scene was very well done, I thought.
Yeah.
The breathing that he brought to it and everything, I thought they did a good
Mhm.
job with that, like making it more realistic and not being able to move and just like, I thought that was good.
Do you know who was supposed to originally play be in the movie?
Alanis Morissette.
No, Scarlett
Okay.
Johansson.
Oh.
Scarlett Jo ScarJo? Wow.
ScarJo was supposed to be Bridget, but her mom told her not to take the role because there was some issue with the movie production involving casting directors boycotting it. So
Okay.
ScarJo's mom was like, "Don't go to Canada and do this movie, eh?"
That's
Wow.
right. They did kind of boycott it in Canada. It was too like racy because it was like so violent and the content involved like teenagers and stuff like that. So I think it had kind of a limited theater showing in Canada, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why the box office is
Yeah,
so low.
it
on
was.
Yeah.
It was around the time of Columbine, and then there was another high school shooting in Alberta, of all places.
Yeah.
So Canada was a little sensitive to it, and also the movie got some funding from the Canadian government. So your tax dollars at work, Canada.
There you go, right there. Yeah. Well, I mean, it works in America. It's usually in the form of tax breaks, So thanks, Atlanta. So for all the Marvel movies that were shot in downtown. So, but no, I do agree with you, Brian. Though the death scene, particularly Sam's, but I think all the death scenes, like the kills in this, are really elaborate for again a small budget movie with. And I always think again back to something Steven Spielberg talked about with Jaws is like not having a lot of money and not having a lot of time made us be really creative. And John Carpenter even talks about that with the original Halloween that they didn't have any money to do anything, so they had to be inventive. And sometimes not having the budget gives you the avenue to do stuff. But I was impressed with the makeup work and all of it. And the more she transforms, the more violent she gets. And I love the way that the transformation works. It's not just wolfy stuff. It's like teenage shit too. Like she gets pimples. Jason gets like his face breaks out, like he's on steroids or something. Like there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, Jay, because the first thing I thought when Jason starts stomping around and being all aggro is like he found himself a stash of gear and he is just like gone full Hulk Hogan with it. He's got the back knee and everything.
Yeah.
You know what else was impressive in this movie? The puking. I've never seen a horror movie with so much vomiting, and it was like the most disgusting vomit scenes I've ever seen. It was the sound, the contents of what they were throwing up. It was so over the top. It was pretty gross.
Cream of mushroom and vegetable soup can make for a heck of a convincing mix. So, and works pretty well and pretty cheap because that soup's real cheap at the store. So.
Something tells me Campbell's isn't going to be advertising that.
No, this is definitely like the great value plus or whatever, the 68-cent can that you can get. So, or you spend $3, you get the big industrial can that you need the big can opener to get out of. But no, I'm with you. There's a lot of violent vomiting in this movie, which was, I mean, they're going with a lot of body horror. It's almost Cronenbergish a little bit with this. And I was sort of surprised that they brought that in too. But I think at some point they realized like, man, y'all, we got werewolves and periods going on. Like, what are we holding back anymore? And the one thing I was surprised of, because and not that I was wanting it, but just surprised the movie didn't have it, was there's not really any like blatant nudity in it. There's just a few little pieces here and there, but you would think a movie like this would just go whole hog for it.
I think it would have been crossing the line because they're supposed to be like 15 and 16 years old. So if they had done that, I think it would have been like, whoa, that's
too much.
Too much.
Yeah, they got
maybe.
close at one point, right?
Mhm.
She's coming on to Sam. And then also they kind of show a boob on the werewolf itself.
Mhm.
Like full, like this is a boob. Like,
That's it.
but
That looked more like your pregnant dog than anything.
no, at the end scene when she's actual full werewolf, they show her.
Okay,
lying
yeah,
there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Like, it's like full boob, not just nipple from a dog.
Yeah, but if that boob counts, we also have to count the duck boobs from Howard the Duck, and I don't think the world's ready for that.
or we count the ones at the end of Troll 2 as well. So.
They weren't human. They weren't human. So
yeah,
I think that's the safety valve right there. That it's not a human.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just
body.
It looks
it's
like
a
human,
monster.
But it's a mammal.
Can we talk about where Mom ended up? Like she was taking them to the whatever they called it, the fun house or whatever, and she goes inside to get her sister, and then they just leave her there. Like she never shows back up at the house. She's still waiting at this place for them to come back out. I don't understand that whole dynamic. Like, where'd Mom go? She's going to help him get away with murder, and then she's gone.
They just wrote her right out of the story.
those are the details I always pay attention to, too. Things like that. Like, you left your bag on the chair. You're going to need your bag later. Like, I always pay attention to that stuff. Where did Mom go? Yeah. Good question.
Like, that house is destroyed now, right? Like, they just
completely
tore the shit out of their own home. And where Dad, no one knows where Dad is either. He's not home.
He's just annoyed with everything all the time. He's in the basement.
We got to talk about how when Trina gets killed at the house, the way they cover it up is doing more murder photos. I was like, that was actually funny. I got
that scene was kind of gross, where she's like, "It's just corn syrup. Want to have some, Dad?"
I know, right? Like,
please don't say yes. Please don't say yes.
Do it again with the vomiting. The vomiting.
I also think if you had that old man licking her fingers like that, that would be a line too far at that point. But I love that they play it for comedy again, and then they throw Trina in the freezer, and that's a joke that got played in Psycho 3, by the way, where there's a body in an ice chest and the sheriff is digging ice out of it, eating it, and while Norman's going like, don't go a little deeper there, sheriff, because there's blood on the ice. I mean, I love that, but I love that it sets a tension. You're like, oh, she's going to get caught, and then the girls are like, no, we'll put the steaks in the freezer, Mom, sure, to cover.
She says, she's staring at her. What do boys want?
I love that.
Mom, like, oh, I'm so glad you asked me.
Yeah, Mom has to go have to talk with her. That was hilarious. So.
That mom is the second most desperate to be liked mom after the one from Mean Girls. Second preference.
Yeah.
I'm not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom. Yeah.
Yes.
Is werewolf blood a carb?
Right. No, you know what? Now I kind of want to see this with Rachel McAdams and Lindsay Lohan. It would have been an interesting dynamic. May have played even about the same, but nothing against Catherine Isabel and Emily Perkins. But we put it in a different world. We put those two in it. I
mean, if you want a ginger werewolf, Lindsay Lohan would be like your number one.
There you go.
I think McAdams can pull that off too. She can be pretty ferocious when she wants to be. So you've seen Wedding Crashers. She beat the crap out of.
Now you got Isla Fisher.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, so we bring the whole thing together. Yeah,
I mean, she would bring the comic relief for sure. I love her.
Yeah, the super clingy werewolf. That would be Isla Fisher, but.
Yeah. No, I will find you.
Yes.
One of the best lines ever.
Can we get Vince Vaughn to be like the annoyed dad or Sam or something? It'd be better than his Norman Bates, but he could pull that off. So I think that would have worked. So
now I have another question to those who have seen this multiple times. Bridget at the end, she puts the blood mix, so she's now got infected with the vampire or the werewolf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her plan is to stake her sister with the formula to cure, and then herself. We never see her do herself, right?
No,
you do not.
All right, so she's going to be a werewolf now, right?
Isn't she in the sequel?
In the sequel, she is a werewolf.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what
I believe a mental hospital. It's been a while since I've seen the sequel.
Yeah,
but yes.
Oh, cool. She ends up in a mental hospital because of all the shit that just happened at the end of the first one, and nobody believes her, and they think she's crazy. Probably.
Yeah, basically the which Friday the 13th is that one, or not which Nightmare on Elm Street is that one, Jay?
That's 3 and 4 really are the setup of
Mental
those.
Hospital.
Dream Warriors.
Yeah, Dream Warriors and Brian's favorite soundtrack song of all time. Not, yeah, 3 and 4 are the mental hospitals. Well, look, Canadian healthcare, like in America, we throw you in jail. In Canada, they throw you in the hospital. So I mean, yeah, there you go. That's the difference. But and give you a little hope there. But I did like her plan though. Is I've got to get her to trust me, right? So I'm going to mix our bloods together, right? We're going to do that. And then I love too that Bridget is trying to sell her on the idea once Ginger's full wolf that she's going to partake, like she's trying to eat the blood and stuff too, but she can't.
That
do
went
it.
on too long.
Oh, see,
Again with the vomiting. There was more vomiting there.
She took
really
too many
gross.
licks of that blood for
It was
me.
a lot. It was a lot of licks to get to the center of that Tootsie Roll Pop. That's for sure.
Oh, God.
It was gross.
Ugh.
But at that point, I think the movie had earned that. Like if we're in the floor of the dirty room with the blood everywhere. Yeah, sure, we're gonna lick it up off the floor, man. Like let's go for it. I applaud the movie for going there with it.
Yeah, we're in the dank incel basement of if you can have an incel teenager.
In the
Yeah.
insult basement. It's good.
I mean, really, it was though. So, but I love how the Ginger Wolf is not fooled by this. And then the way you wrote that, I had a question though, Ron, because you said she impaled herself on the thing. Like, does Bridget kill her, or is it like a freak accident? Like, how does that go down where she lands on the knife
I think Ginger chooses the knife.
instead of killing
I
her
think
sister?
I think Ginger jumps into the knife rather than hurt her sister.
Oh, see,
Okay.
I thought it was
that's-
the other way. I thought that.
I think that's the last little bit of her humanity.
I could see
Brian,
that. I think I agree with that.
Brian,
Yeah,
you
I
saw it
thought
the other way though.
Yeah, I thought that Bridget stabbed her, put her
But
out
my
of her
question-
misery.
But that seems like that's way too alpha behavior for Bridget.
Yeah,
That's
but
not
at
been her
this
MO
point, I
this
think
whole
she
movie.
realizes that Ginger's gone. Like she's not there anymore. It's not her. Even if she stuck her with the anecdote, I don't think it could bring her back anymore at this point. And so I think she chooses to kill her to put her out of the misery. You know,
See, Brian, I agree with you, and I'll go back to another Buffy reference. When spoiler alert, when Buffy has to kill Angel, when it's it's too late to reverse the whatever that's going on in the background, and she does it anyway because she has to. Like it, and that's why I took the way she cries on her chest at the end of it was I didn't want to do that. This wasn't my plan, but okay, and maybe that's why she doesn't cure herself, so because she can go live on and memory of or whatever. But I took it as like you did, Brian, that she made that choice and then immediately regretted it. But it was all she could do in the moment, and that's why she cried over it.
Well, and she kept asking her to recognize who she was, right?
Yeah.
And it never happened. So I think at that point, she's not there anymore. My sister's gone. I'm going to die if I don't kill this werewolf.
I think she did recognize her, and that's why she
Did it?
went towards
Okay.
the knife. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can go either way with it. But that's what makes this neat again for a low budget, horror movie, just cheesy horror movie, to have that kind of depth in your ending shows a little bit of planning and foresight, by the writer and the director and everything. Like they put something into that. And again, the performances are good. I know that's not Catherine Isabel in the wolf outfit at that point, but Emily Perkins has given a hell of a performance in that scene, having played the wallflower for the better part of the movie, but then slowly but surely kind of come out of that shell as it goes. What'd you make out of that, the dark ending of this though, Kelly? Because I did not think this would end with just the lone girl walking off into the moonlight. Everybody died.
Everybody died. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting power shift because, like you guys said, Bridget was the meek and mild, kind of weaker of the two sisters. And then she's standing alone at the end and kind of like moving forward. So I found that kind of interesting.
I thought it was sudden. I didn't expect that to be the end, right? I didn't expect that to be over, but I don't know. I don't know how I would have wanted it to end either. But it just seemed like all of a sudden it's over and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it's we don't have any more shooting days with Mimi Rogers, and so let's just kind of let's do the Incredible Hulk ending where she walks off and the slow piano music plays while she's
Play the Lonely
hitchhiking down
Man.
the road.
You don't get to know what happens to mom. No.
Yeah,
Watch the sequel.
I do wonder if it was one of those like this movie's gone on about 10 minutes longer than you need to anyway. So now we run out of money and people. We got to finish this. And the last of our effects budget is on this wolf costume and all this blood and, puke. So we can't do any more at this point. So
I think they like made it kind of like an ending like that because they were planning another movie afterwards and they wanted to keep people like guessing as to what did happen to everyone or what was going to happen. Or
I can't imagine that they had a sequel in mind on this at the time.
I never believe filmmakers when they say like, oh yeah, I had it all planned out. They didn't have none of it planned out. I think what they wanted to do is what a lot of movies have done and really have all done since John Carpenter in 1978 or even Bob Clark in 1976 or whatever, 75 when Black Christmas was, just leave it hanging. Leave the audience with the idea that it's still out there somewhere. There's something else going, because what makes people come back and watch a movie again when they can fill in a blank at the end of it and then they go back and try to find something. And again, this is a movie that built a cult following, and you build a cult following because you leave people wanting something. So I think they purposely said, hey, we're going to leave people wanting something. And then it feels a little perfunctory, I think, because of the budgetary reasons. Again, there's no Mimi Rogers to show up and we don't have any money to burn the house down. So this is what we're going to go with at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this movie could have used a burning house at the end of it. Like,
yeah,
Bridget should have covered up her sister's crimes by just, torturing the place. But
yeah,
I feel like
we need a
suburb
funeral
wouldn't have
pyre.
allowed it.
Yeah, we need a funeral pyre at the end of this. But
And then she could have walked off into the darkness with the fire burning behind her, looking all crazy.
Classic.
Right. Also, speaking of Canada,
bomb pull up.
They needed the money to, like Buffy did at the end of that season 2, and bring in Sarah McLachlan songs, so we get good sad Canada songs to wrap this. That would have really put the mood down for everybody, but it would have fit the time period. So
if it was going to fit the time period, wouldn't it have been like Our Lady Peace?
Maybe, but again, McLachlan was huge in the early 2000s, man. If you want to go sad, that's the way to go. Yeah, Our Lady Peace would work. Maybe Lit would have been the party music, but Well, I'm trying to think of
like extremely Canadian bands. So the party music would have been Tragically Hip.
Yeah, there you go.
Nickelback was too new.
Yeah, they were way too new, and I don't think they would have fit the mood.
That does not fit the whole vibe going on with
maybe
when
Gingers don't like her sex capades, you play the Nickelback, but
it ends with a
look at this photograph.
They show all the dead pictures of them.
There we go. That's perfect. Yeah,
every time I do it makes me laugh.
Someone take clips of this movie and send it to photograph on social media. Make that happen.
Oh man.
I was going to say it ends with a downbeat cover of Skater Boy, but that's
there we go. I do the lo-fi.
With the Lana Del Rey breathy.
No, you get typo negative to do Skater
Boy. Said, see you later, boy.
There you go. Yes, exactly. Well, I think we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So for those that may be new to the show, we rate the movies on a scale of popcorn, the smaller the corn to the larger, depending on how well you like the movie. Kelly, let's start with you. What are yours for Ginger Snaps?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is tough because there are so many categories I would rate differently with the different. I'm just gonna give it like a straight up medium. No, like between a medium and a large. That one size that's not quite the jumbo and it's not the medium. It's like kind of just like a
the large.
Yeah, like just the large, not the super large or anything, but like the large. It was entertaining, and there were so many parts that were really like smartly dark and funny to me, and it brought back, like I said, high school memories. The wardrobe was pretty cool too. I enjoyed all of that. Like you can get a lot of fashion ideas and inspo from this movie. So yeah, it was good in a lot of ways. It was really cheesy. It was scary. It was gross. I liked it. Yeah.
Ron?
Well, as the resident Ginger Snaps super fan, having seen it at the exact right time to completely fall in love with the movie and all its weird Canadian glory, I'm going to go with a large popcorn. I will agree with our guest. It has there are flaws, but I've seen much worse movies that spent way more money that didn't have half as many good ideas as this one has, and that lack the execution that this one does. They put their money on the screen really well, I thought. And I feel like every time I watch this movie, I get a little more out of it, I think. Not because I notice anything different, but just because I see more of how it gets put together as I go on. So yeah, I'm going to go with a large popcorn. I'm going to be a defender of this movie. I will pick up my field hockey stick and whack any bully who says a bad thing about it.
B-Rye, what about you?
You know, I enjoyed it more and more as we talked about it than I did the first one I watched it. I don't think I can go a large popcorn, though. I think I'm going to have to stick with the medium popcorn. It has some rewatchability, I think, but it's not what I'm going to like reach for when I'm in the mood for a horror movie, right? Mm-hmm. It's just not. If it's on, maybe I'll watch it type thing. It was pretty cheesy for a long time, and there was some stuff that made you cringe a little bit, but overall, it was enjoyable enough. So medium popcorn.
So for me, the thing that I will really applaud this movie for, echo a lot of what you all have said, but being able to balance horror with dark comedy is a very hard thing to do without tipping one direction or the other too much. And there's plenty of examples of ones that have failed at that. And this movie nails that completely. And again, I think it's to something you said, Ron, they put all of their money and their effort on the screen. Like you see every last cent and every last bit of effort there to do it. And even though it was miserable for the actors to go through it, they clearly gave it a lot. And like I say, even to this day, Katharine Isabelle will own this movie. Like it's, sure. Hey, I was in Ginger Snaps, like she loves it. And I think that's cool. That says something about the fact that putting this together, because making movies is hard. It's the hard work, and it can be hell on everybody that's involved in them. And the fact that they still think about it 20 something years later and will still laugh and joke about it means at least had a good time with it. Right. And, I think about things that I did before that at the time just seemed like, oh God, is this even worth it? And then in retrospect now I'm like, yeah, that was actually a lot of fun, So for me, this movie is one of those that it's not one that I would just naturally go to. I'm with you there, Brian, but it's definitely one I'm glad I finally broke the seal on. And it's one that I'm glad to have in the viewing party now, because it's a lot of fun. And I like Ginger Snaps too as well. But for this one, I'm going to give it a large popcorn as well, because again, it's just so much fun. It's a movie that knows exactly what it is. And I applaud movies like that go completely for what they are and have a good time. So it's a lot of fun. And I mean, shoot, with the variety we've had here for Shocktober, gang, I mean, we've done it all from the Velocipaster to this and, everything in between. So this is definitely a fun one. I'm glad we got to do it. Kelly, thanks so much for coming back on Film Strip, doing this movie with us. It's been a blast. Please tell us how they can follow you and all the fun stuff that you got going on. Yeah.
Yes. So like I said, I've got a show coming out in 2024 that I'm working on with Captain from True Crime Garage. And the best way to find me, if you want to follow me, is my Instagram. It's just at Kelli Brink, and it's Kelly with an I. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. This was great. You guys are hilarious.
Thank you so much again for coming on. We'll link all of Kelly's stuff in the show description. And of course, you can follow this show's social media wherever you can find your social medias at Film Strip Pod. We're on Facebook and Instagram and the artist formerly known as Twitter and whatever the other new thing is, Threads. We're kind of spreading it out there, but go to filmstrippodcast.com. That's where you're going to go to the Spotify for Podcaster site. That's where we're on all the major services, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever pods are casted. As Ron likes to say, you can find this podcast and all of its many, many back catalog stories. Kelly's been on a previous show. And of course, Ron and Brian have been on many of them with me, and we appreciate your support. Tag us, let us know what you think of the show, and share it on your socials as well, because we appreciate always the interaction with our audience. So for Ron, for Brian, for our guest Kelly, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.